Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into some really foundational stuff. We've got excerpts from a classic text on strategy, on conflict, and we're going to pull out the core ideas for you.
Yeah, our mission is basically to find those key insights, maybe some surprising bits, and the practical things you can actually take away from this ancient wisdom.
Think of it like we're guiding you through it, looking at how these old principles about warfare might, still click today. Not just for fighting, but for loads of things.
Absolutely. It touches on leadership, planning, how you handle competition. It's broader than you might think.
Exactly. And the source we're diving into is, well, it's Sun Tzu's The Art of War. Plus, we've got some interesting comments from historical figures who actually tried to use these ideas.
It's more than just tactics. It's almost a philosophy for how to approach challenging situations.
So yeah, let's unpack it. Where do we start with something this influential? What's Sun Tzu saying about leading troops, the cost of fighting, using deception, getting good intel?
Well, Sun Tzu kind of starts right at the beginning. He talks about the basic things you need to look at to figure out your military situation and even predict if you're likely to win or lose.
Right, the fundamental building blocks.
Exactly. He calls them the five heads or fundamental factors. Every general has to get these.
Okay, the core pillars. Let's start there. What are these five?
So first up is the moral law. This is really about the connection between the leader and the people, making sure they're totally on board, willing to follow, even when it's dangerous.
So like morale, but deeper, a shared purpose.
Yeah, exactly. Unity and trust. Sun Tzu actually sees this as flowing from the ruler. It's their attribute almost.
Okay, that makes sense. Leader and led, totally connected. What's number two?
Second is heaven. Now, this isn't mystical exactly. It means understanding the natural world's rhythms, night and day, cold and heat, the timing, the seasons.
So the environment's clock and calendar, kinda?
Pretty much. Commentators added things like the elements, wind, clouds. It's the big picture environmental context, timing.
Got it. And number three.
Third is Earth. This is the actual ground you're on. Distances, how dangerous is it? Is it open or are there narrow passes? Your chances of survival based on the terrain.
Right, the physical stage makes sense. So we've got the people, the timing, the place. Who pulls it all together?
That leads us straight to number four, the commander, the general. They need to have specific qualities: wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness.
Interesting mix. It's not just about being tough. There's wisdom and kindness in there too.
Yeah, it's that blend of traditional virtues with, military necessity, a holistic view of leadership.
And the last pillar. What's number five?
Fifth is method and discipline. This is the practical stuff. How the armies organize the ranks, the subdivisions, logistics, keeping the supply roads open, managing the money, the expenditure.
The nuts and bolts, the structure.
Exactly, the internal machinery.
So Sun Tzu is saying, look at these five things. Plus, he adds, comparing the commander's abilities and how well discipline like rewards and punishments works, making it 7 points total. Compare both sides on these.
And you can actually forecast who's likely to win or lose. It's a system for assessment.
It's way beyond just counting heads or tanks, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. It's about the fundamental health, the capability of the whole organization.
Okay, talking about the commander Sun Tzu really leans into their role, their responsibility. He's got that famous line, hasn't he? If the orders aren't clear, it's the general's fault.
Right. But if the orders are clear and people don't follow them, then it's on the officers.
And there's that story in the sources that really hammers this home. It's pretty brutal, but you don't forget it. The one with the concubines.
Ah, yes. That's Sun Tzu showing his methods to the king of Wu. He uses the king's favorite concubines, tries to drill them like soldiers, gives clear orders, and they just laugh.
They just giggle, right? Don't take it seriously at all.
Exactly. So Sun Tzu is saying, look, I've got the authority here. Orders the two leaders executed on the spot.
Wow. And the king tries to stop him.
Yeah, the king pleads, these are my favorites. But Sun Tzu basically says, sorry, king, but when I'm acting as general, military discipline comes first. I can't take your orders if they undermine that. And he goes through with it.
And then what happened?
The rest of the concubines immediately snapped to attention, performed the drills perfectly. It's a stark lesson in establishing absolute authority.
Yeah, no kidding. It really shows the weight on the commander and the need for that strictness you mentioned earlier, alongside the other virtues.
Exactly. Wisdom, sincerity, benevolence, courage, and strictness. You need the whole package. But even then, a general can mess up badly. The sources talk about 6 ways an army can fall apart, 6 calamities.
It's calamity.
And they all come back to the general's mistakes.
Okay, what are they? Is there a common theme?
Let's see, there's flight, insubordination, collapse, ruin, disorganization, and rout. And the really interesting thing, almost all of them trace back to some failure inside the army, usually sparked by the general.
Not just the enemy beating them.
Well, flight might be because the enemy is overwhelming. But things like collapse, that's often weak soldiers pushed too hard. Ruin, that can be angry officers going off script, ignoring orders because they're mad at the general. Disorganization, unclear commands, it's often self-inflicted.
So leadership failures are the biggest threat. That makes sense with the idea that the ruler's orders shouldn't interfere once the general's in the field. They need that autonomy.
Precisely. Running an army in combat needs quick, flexible decisions. It's not like governing a peaceful kingdom with kid gloves, as the commentary puts it. The commander needs to react instantly to what's happening.
There's also that anecdote about General Wu Qi, right? Sharing the rough conditions with his men.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful one. Shows how to build that loyalty, that moral law connection we talked about. Wu Qi apparently ate the same food, wore the same clothes as his lowest soldiers,
Right.
even carried his own supplies.
And the most extreme example.
The story goes he even sucked the poison or virus out of a soldier's infected boil or abscess.
Seriously?
That's the story. And the soldier's mother apparently cried when she heard. Not because her son was hurt, but because Wu Qi had done the same for her husband years before. And her husband then fought so fiercely out of loyalty that he got himself killed. She was afraid the same would happen to her son.
Wow. That's intense loyalty inspired by that level of shared hardship and care.
It really illustrates the depth of connection a commander could build.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit.
Hmm.
From leadership and morale to the practical side, the sheer cost of war. The sources are pretty blunt about this, aren't they?
Oh, they really are. Sun Tzu spells it out. Raising a big army, say 100,000 men, and moving them anywhere costs a fortune. Just keeping them supplied at the front lines. He estimates something like 1,000 ounces of silver every single day.
1,000 ounces a day, just for the basics.
Yeah, basic supplies, fixing equipment, carts, armor, arrows, spears. All of the little things add up massively.
And what about the impact back home on the regular people?
It's huge. If the army's far away, supplying them drains the economy. People might lose up to 3/10 of their income just supporting the war effort through taxes or requisitions.
3/10.
And even if the army is close by, their demand drives up prices for everyone, making people poorer. Plus, the government's own costs for weapons, chariots, armor, all that stuff. It could eat up 4/10, maybe 40% of the state's entire revenue.
40% of the budget just on the military hardware and logistics. Incredible.
Yeah.
And the human cost, taking people away from work.
Right. That army of 100,000. It could mean maybe 700,000 families have their main worker pulled away from farming or their craft. A massive disruption to the whole society.
Okay, this is where it gets really critical, I think. With all these staggering costs, Sun Tzu makes a really strong claim. Prolonged warfare never helps a country.
It's absolutely central to his thinking. Long wars just grind everyone down, soldiers lose their edge, supplies run out, the treasury gets emptied, and crucially, it leaves you open to attack from someone else.
The delay itself is the enemy.
Exactly. The evils of war are the cost, the suffering, and the time it takes.
So if dragging things out is disastrous, what's the smart way to fight?
Sun Tzu's logic is clear. Only someone who truly gets how bad war is can understand how to wage it profitably. And the key, rapidity. Speed.
Move fast.
Move fast. Don't hang around waiting for every last reinforcement or for perfect conditions. Get across the border, hit the enemy hard and decisively. Time is more valuable than having slightly more men or perfectly laid plans.
You see that with famous generals later too, right? Like Caesar or Napoleon, always emphasizing speed.
Absolutely. It's a recurring theme in successful campaigns. It stems from this understanding of the economic and human burden.
And how does a smart general lessen that burden on their own people while fighting?
By foraging on the enemy, living off the land. You bring enough supplies to get started, obviously, but the wise general makes a priority of capturing enemy supplies and using their resources.
So you feed your army and weaken the enemy simultaneously.
Precisely. It's efficient and strategically sound.
Okay, shifting from the practical costs to the mental game, the psychological side, Sun Tzu's most famous line probably fits here. All warfare is based on deception.
That's the one everyone knows, isn't it? And it's fundamental. But what does it actually mean on the ground?
What does it look like?
It means you're constantly trying to mislead your opponent. If you're strong, look weak. If you're about to attack, look inactive. If you're nearby, make them think you're far away. If you're far, make them think you're close.
It's about perception management.
Totally. Use bait to lure them into traps. Pretend you're disorganized, then crush them when they get overconfident.
Like, Wellington was apparently brilliant at this, hiding his troop numbers and intentions.
Exactly. Masters of deception control what the enemy thinks is happening, but it's not just about fooling the enemy. It's also about understanding your own troop's psychology.
How so?
Well, Sun Tzu observes how soldiers' energy levels change during the day. Their spirit, he calls it, is sharpest in the morning. By midday, it starts to fade. By evening, they're mostly thinking about going home, getting back to camp.
So you don't want to attack when the enemy is fresh and fired up in the morning.
Right. The clever general avoids that. They wait. They attack when the enemy is tired, sluggish, maybe already thinking about pulling back. It's the art of studying moods, timing your attacks psychologically.
That's subtle. And things like gongs and drums and flags, they're not just for show.
Not at all. They're vital communication tools. In a huge, potentially chaotic army, they focus everyone's eyes and ears on the commander's signals. They create unity, allow a massive force to move and act as one coordinated body.
Control amid the chaos.
Exactly. And yeah, ultimately, you can attack the enemy's mind, their balance, their confidence, not just their bodies or positions.
This links to another big theme, doesn't it? Adaptation. How tactics have to change.
Yeah.
The source says war isn't static, it's fluid, like water taking the shape of the ground.
That's a great analogy Sun Tzu uses. A truly skilled general, a heaven-born captain, he calls them, doesn't have a fixed playbook. They adapt constantly based on the enemy, the terrain, the situation.
Flexibility is key.
It's everything, because the conditions are always shifting. What worked yesterday might fail today.
And part of this adaptability is the idea of being formless. What does that mean?
Being formless means you're so subtle, so unpredictable that the enemy literally cannot figure out your strategy or where your main effort is. They don't know what to defend against or where you might attack.
So you become invisible, almost inaudible, strategically speaking.
Pretty much.
And the result,
What happens to the enemy then?
if they don't know where you'll strike, they have to try and defend everywhere. And if they spread their forces thin, trying to cover all bases...
They become weak everywhere.
Exactly. While you, being formless, can concentrate your strength against one of their now weakened points, it makes your attack irresistible.
This sounds like it requires incredible situational awareness, which ties back to understanding the ground, right? Sun Tzu lists those 9 different types of terrain or situations.
Yeah, the 9 situations. It's a framework for thinking about the strategic implications of where you are. Things like dispersive ground, facile ground, contentious, open, intersecting highways, serious ground, difficult, hemmed in, and desperate ground.
Each one demands a different approach. Can you give us an example or two?
Sure. So, on dispersive ground, that's when you're close to home, and your soldiers might be tempted to just scatter and go back to their families. The main thing is to create unity. Inspire them. Keep them focused on the shared mission. Okay, what about when you're deep in enemy territory?
That's serious ground. You're far from home, supplies are a long way off, survival is key. So the priority becomes foraging, living off the enemy's land, ensuring your own sustenance.
And what if you get stuck, like trapped?
That's hemmed-in ground. No easy way out. Sun Tzu says here you absolutely must use stratagem, clever tricks, think outside the box to escape.
Like that story about Hannibal, with the oxen and the burning twigs to confuse the Romans blocking the pass.
Exactly that kind of situation. Using ingenuity when you're cornered, and then there's desperate ground.
Desperate ground. Sounds bad.
It is. It means there's literally no escape, no refuge, backs against the wall. And Sun Tzu says on desperate ground, there's only one thing to do: fight.
No other option.
None. And interestingly, the commentary notes that soldiers in this situation might even weep beforehand, not out of fear, but maybe out of sheer determination, knowing it's literally do or die. That desperation creates incredible fighting spirit.
That idea of shared danger creating unity, it reminds me of that snake analogy of the text. The shuai
Well, yeah, the shuai snake from the mountains. The idea is if you hit its head, its tail strikes back. Hit the tail, the head strikes. Hit the middle, both ends attack.
So the army should be like that. Instantly responsive, totally coordinated.
That's the ideal Sun Tzu points to. An army so well disciplined and connected that an attack on any part brings a reaction from the whole thing. Like people from enemy states, Wu and Yue, forced to cooperate when they're caught in the same boat during a storm. Common danger forces teamwork.
Makes sense. Now, beyond these big strategic ideas, Sun Tzu also mentions some specific tools, doesn't he? Like using fire.
He does, yeah, briefly. He talks about attack by fire, burning enemy camp supplies, baggage trains, arsenals, but he's very practical about it.
It's not just set things on fire.
No. He says you need the right conditions. A dry season. Specific days when the wind is likely to rise, based on constellations apparently. And you have to attack from upwind. Also, crucially, don't attack with fire if the enemy is clearly ready and settled, wait for chaos or movement. He also notes water can stop fire spreading, but it can't seize the spoils like fire can reveal.
So a powerful tool, but very conditional.
Exactly. And then there's the final tool, the one he gives immense weight to. Spies. Intelligence.
Yes. Foreknowledge. This is where he makes that really powerful argument, isn't it?
He really does. He connects it right back to the massive costs of war we talked about earlier, the 1,000 ounces of silver a day, the strain on 700,000 families, years of fighting possibly decided in a single day.
All that suffering and expense.
And then he says to not know the enemy's situation, to stumble around blind because you're too stingy to pay for spies, maybe just 100 ounces of silver for some key information or rewards, to refuse that small cost.
Is what?
Is the height of inhumanity.
Wow. The height of inhumanity. That's strong language.
It's incredibly strong. His reasoning is that ignorance, failing to get intelligence, directly leads to prolonging the war, which means prolonging all that massive cost and suffering. Therefore, being cheap about spies is inhumane.
So getting good intel isn't just smart strategy. It's actually a moral imperative to reduce suffering.
That's his argument. It completely reframes the value of espionage. Then he goes on to list the different types.
Right, there are 5 kinds.
Yeah. You've got local spies, who are just inhabitants of the area. Inward spies, who are enemy officials you've managed to bribe or recruit. Converted spies, these are enemy spies that you've turned doubled. Doomed spies, who you deliberately feed false information to take back to the enemy. And surviving spies, the ones who go out, get information, and come back.
Okay, quite a network. Is one type more important than others?
Sun Tzu puts special emphasis on the converted spy, the double agent. He says that really actionable foreknowledge, the kind that lets you plan effectively, can only come, initially at least, from them.
Why the converted spy specifically?
Because they already have access. They know the enemy's inner workings, their secrets. And crucially, they are the key to recruiting and effectively using all the other kinds of spies. They know who to approach, what information is valuable.
So that turned agent is the linchpin for the whole intelligence operation. How do you handle something that sensitive?
With extreme care. Sun Tzu stresses you need really close relationships with your spies. They have to trust you, feel connected to the general personally. You need to reward them generously for the huge risks they take. And above all, absolute secrecy.
No leaks.
None. He says communication should be mouth to ear. If any secrets about your spy operations get out, it could be fatal for the spy, obviously, but maybe even for the general or the entire army if your plans are revealed.
And his final word on spies. It really underlines their importance.
He puts it very clearly. Spies are, and I quote, a most important element in war. Why? Because on them depends an army's ability to move.
Without intelligence, you're paralyzed.
Essentially, yes. You're blind. You can't make informed decisions. You don't know when to advance, when to retreat, where the enemy is weak, where they're strong. Intelligence enables action.
So, after this whirlwind tour through Sun Tzu, what does it all boil down to for you listening right now? I mean, these ideas are ancient, about warfare.
But they're not just about war, are they? They're about understanding how conflict works, how to manage resources, how to lead people effectively, how crucial it is to adapt, and the absolute non-negotiable value of good information.
So why should you care? Why listen to this today?
Because understanding these dynamics, assessment, costs, perception, adaptation, intelligence gives you a really powerful toolkit. It's relevant way beyond ancient battlefields. Think about business strategy, project management, negotiations, even just navigating difficult personal challenges.
Right. This deep dive, hopefully, gives you a shortcut to grasping these core concepts that Sun Tzu thought were absolutely vital for success in any competitive or challenging environment, especially understand those huge costs involved.
It's a way of looking at problems through a strategic lens that's, well, it's been tested for centuries.
Okay, that pretty much wraps up our deep dive into these fascinating excerpts from The Art of War and the commentary around it. We've hit on those 5 pillars for assessing a situation, the commander's role, and their potential failings.
The stark economics of conflict and why speed is so important, the mind games of deception and understanding morale, adapting to the ground beneath your feet.
And finishing with those special tools like fire, and especially the critical, maybe even moral, importance of spies and intelligence.
Thanks so much for joining us as we explored all this. We really hope you found some aha moments and there may be a new perspective from this ancient wisdom.
And we'll leave you with a final thought to chew on. Sun Tzu argued that refusing to pay the small price for intelligence in war was the height of inhumanity because ignorance prolongs suffering. So here's the question for you. Where else in life, maybe in your work, your plans, even your relationships, might a reluctance to invest the effort, time, or maybe even money to truly understand a situation, to gather the needed information? Where might that reluctance be, inadvertently prolonging difficulty, causing unnecessary cost, or maybe even setting you up for failure? Something to think about.